Hi, good evening, friends. I hope my audio is clear. Okay, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Dikshit Agarwal. I'm a first year student at IIM Rohtak. I belong to PGP06 batch. First of all, many congratulations for making this far to the common admission test, and I wish you all the best with your VAT and PI process. Now, what can you expect from this webinar? This webinar would be beneficial for the students who have a background in mechanical or production processes, and also for the students who have a work ex in this field, maybe in a production facility or maybe any other fields of operation. Also, in your interview, persons who do not have any experience in operations, they could also be asked why operations, because if you show an inclination towards that, so it could be very beneficial for them. So we'll be starting with our presentation. Our first slide would be what is operations. You must have many things in your mind regarding operations. So we classify all the aspects of operation into three parts. It is a business function responsible for planning, coordinating, and controlling. By planning, what we means is we make a plan, what all resources are required, where to get the inventory from, what is our demand, we make our forecast. Coordinating, we coordinate various operations. Suppose a product requires two tasks to be done on it. Which task to be done first? Which should be done later on? Should we outsource it? Should we do it ourselves? That part's coming to coordinating. And the last part is controlling. Once you have mapped out a plan, you have executed a plan, you need to ensure that all the control mechanisms are in place. That if a process required 2 minutes, is it being completed in 2 minutes, or is it taking excess time, or is it taking less time, and what can you do to control it? So this is basically a very brief about operations. So we'll continue to the next slide. Why do we need operations? The various aspects I've just noted down a very few simple points. The basic objective of operations is to transform inputs into output. You have the raw material, you get the finished products. How you get them, where you procure raw materials from, what production process you apply to it, how much staffing level you require, everything is determined through operations. Then there are various sub parts in the operations which are required for transforming the inputs to input. The first of them would be inventory management. I'll explain the parts of inventory, the various type of inventory in the subsequent slides, but just giving a brief about inventory management is how many products should we have in our inventory. It could be raw materials, it could be work in progress inventory, or it could be finished goods. So we need to manage because there are costs associated with inventory. There could be ordering costs, there are holding costs. So we need to determine the optimal number of quantity that should be ordered and when to order. Next comes production management. We have our inventory, we have the raw material. Now, how to transform that raw material into finished goods? What production processes should I go for? Should I go for a manual labor? Should I automate the process? Which task to be done first? Which to be done later on? Everything is determined by production management. And next is incremental value addition. Operations is not a single process. It adds value incrementally. You have silica, you make chips out of it, then those chips are assembled into motherboards, then the motherboards are shipped to an assembler, then a Dell, suppose a company is a Dell assembles all the parts, taking a motherboard, taking a keyboard, a monitor, assemble into one part, and then logistics and distributions, they are transferred over the transportation agencies and they are handed over to customers. So value is added at each and every point. Next is cost control. Well, as you know, main objective of the firms are to make profit. Actually, the main objective is stock value maximization, but let's consider it's to make profit. Profit can be made by two ways. Either you increase the price, either you reduce the cost. Increasing the price could be very problematic because it could lead to change in the demand pattern. But cost control is in your hands. How will you control cost? Through operations. You'll optimize your inventory, you'll optimize your production management processes, you'll optimize the time, you'll reduce the time that is spent in the work in progress inventory, and that is how you try to make your products as you want to maintain the quality, but you want to make them as cheap as possible because you have to survive in this competitive environment. Next is materials planning. A materials planning concept could be you require various materials to make a product. Now, what materials should you manufacture yourself? What could be outsourced? You do not need to make everything by yourself because you do not have economies of scale in each and every product. Maybe procuring a product from any third party vendor could be more economical. So you need to plan accordingly where to get your materials from. Then, when the product is prepared, then comes distribution and logistics. Distribution logistics could be of various tiers: zero tier, one tier, two tier, three tier. Zero tier could be you are the manufacturer, you are directly shipping it to the customers. This is basically done in B2B businesses. Then comes the one tier. You have an agent in between. Then two tier, a wholesaler and a retailer approach. So you have to determine what type of distribution and logistics you need to keep regarding your products, because every product has its own marketing structure, and for that its own distribution and logistics is required. Then staffing, very important point. As the labor costs are getting higher, so you need to have the optimal number of people. There are labor laws which concern that you cannot hire and fire people frequently. If you could hire and fire and there are no costs associated with it, it would be a perfect world. But that is not the case. So you need to determine the optimal number of people that you require, depending on what are the hiring costs, what are the firing costs, what are their daily wages, so that you can minimize the cost and you can maintain your production capacity. Then an important question can be asked from you: why operations? You have various fields: finance, marketing, HR, IT. Why do you want to go for operations? See, the answer is, if we come for an IT is an enabler. Enabler means it provides you with tools and software that helps you to run your business. But does it provide you with the products? Suppose you are an HUL, you need to sell soaps. Okay, so IT system is in place, or which is coordinating with the consumers, with the sellers, with the distributors. But is the IT providing with the soap? No. Then comes to the marketing aspect. Marketing we consider as very important because it helps us determine the demand. It helps us determine the consumer behavior, whether a product will be acceptable, whether it will not be. If it is acceptable, what kind of demand could we expect from the consumer side? So that is very good for the planning purposes. When we are in operations, so marketing helps in the planning processes and the final delivery. But making the product, that's done by operations. HR definitely provides with the support services of staffing or maybe labor issues, dealing all with that. And finance is also an enabler because you need an operating capital to run your company. You need to analyze at the end of the day whether are you making profits or are you making losses. So that you have to determine. And finance also has a very clear reflection on the stock price. But the products at the end of the day are made by operations. So that should be taken into account, that operation is actually the backbone of the company. That's why operations is very important. Now, when the word operations come to our mind, the first thing that strikes to us is a manufacturing industry. Maybe iron and steel firm making iron sheets, or maybe making nut bolts, or maybe an assembly line manufacturing automobiles. But with the increase in technology and with the global evolution, services has become a very important part of an economy. And operations is a very, very, very important role to play in the delivery of those services. So how do we distinguish between manufacturing and services industry? Manufacturing industry, as I tell you, will give you tangible products. At the end of the day, you know that you have a computer, that you have a mobile, that you have a packet of chips, that you have soap. But services, that intangible. Like take an example of a telecom carrier. It is providing you the services to make calls. but does it add any tangible product? No. Then we comes to the quantification aspect. In manufacturing, you can measure how many products have been manufactured, how many laptops have been assembled, how many laptops have been shipped. But when it comes to services aspect, it's become difficult. Take for an example of a banking industry. How will you quantify the data? Whether it will be on the basis of number of customers that are visiting your bank, or number of or the amount of deposit that have been making, or the loans that you are providing, or about the FDs. So it becomes a little complex when the quantification comes in the part of services. Then, as we know, manufacturing is capital intensive. You need to set up huge plants, huge assembly lines, which requires a lot of cost. Whereas services are more of labor driven. You need to have the right talent. For to run a bank, computer systems are not that important as the employees that are sitting over there. Then manufacturing also gives you the concept of inventories. There may be raw material like maybe iron, or maybe nut bolts, or maybe some chemicals, and there may be work in progress, parts, maybe a liquid solution which is in intermediate stage, and there could be a final product like a laptop or a soap or a detergent powder or anything. But services, there are no inventories. Services, you make a call from a telecom operator, but they cannot keep any inventories. It is not like that if demand grows of your services, you can keep a bandwidth which you can use later on. If you are having electricity at your home, okay, we can have inverters to maybe keep some electricity as a backup, but to do it as a large scale is impossible. Whatever power is generated, it is directly transmitted to your homes. You cannot keep it in inventories that, okay, right now it's winters, people do not need power, so let's store it and we'll supply it in the summers when the air conditioners turn on. That is a little difficult process. But at the end of the day, whether it be manufacturing or services, operations play a very important role. As we can see in the similarities, both are demand driven. You need to analyze the demand, whether how many products are needed, or what is the demand for electricity. That is common. These processes are common to both the industries. Then there are various concepts of quality, productivity, capacity, scheduling, staffing, and many more. Quality, you have to maintain a certain quality. Suppose you are a medicine manufacturing firm, then you have to maintain quality figures, that how many amount of chemicals go into that. And suppose you are a telecom operator, then you have to maintain a quality that the number of call drops will be less than this, or the bandwidth provided will be at least 256 kbps. So you have to maintain your quality. Productivity, for a manufacturing firm, you have to see that each operation is working at its optimal production level or not, or what productivity level it is actually working on. And when it comes to services, whether suppose you go to a bank, whether the cashier who is sitting there is making enough transactions that he can make, or maybe okay. Then we comes to the capacity part of it. Capacity determines the maximum uh, capacity that a firm could produce. Suppose you work for 100 hours in a week, and to produce one unit of laptop, it takes 2 hours. So what is the capacity per week? It's 100 hours divided by 2. So you can produce 50 laptops. That is your capacity. And in services capacity, suppose you have a network tower. It has a capacity to transmit 2 Mbps of data from it. Now, if there are 10 users, they can each get a speed of 200 kbps. If there are 5 users, they can each get a speed of 400 kbps. So that is how we determine capacity, and that is the importance of capacity. Then comes the scheduling part of it. Scheduling part of in a laptop is, first you need to produce chips, then you make an assembly, and then you go for distribution. If we come to a banking industry, the scheduling part is, first you have to open an account, then you have to deposit the money, then you can make the transactions over it. So what process will follow, which process will follow the next is determined by scheduling. Staffing, I have already explained, it remains the same. Now I'll give you an example of operations in service industry. Operation in manufacturing industry is very common. We'll come to it on a later part. But because when you'll be coming into MBA colleges, most of you will be getting jobs in service industries. So it becomes very important that you realize the importance of operations in services industries. So first is QoS. It's called quality of services. As there's a statement made that quality of service determines the cost for a telecom company. It is not about the data they offer you, but it's about the quality of service. See, they can give you a 2 GB pack, or they could give you a 5 GB pack, or they could give you a 10 GB data pack. It does not matter to them if it comes to cost. But what matters to them is whether they're giving you a 2G connection with a limited speed of suppose 128 kbps, whether they're giving you a 3G connection 1 Mbps, whether they're giving you 4G connection 16 Mbps. That is where the real cost come. What quality of service they're providing you. So it has a very important part in this industry. Then we could come to lot distribution. uh, there are various, suppose you are in a university and you have a connection of Airtel. So there are two Airtel towers situated in university. Which calls should be routed through which towers is determined by lot distribution, because it should not happen that one tower is dealing at its optimal capacity and other is just sitting idle. It will affect the quality of service. So to maintain that, equal load should be distributed, and it is determined by operations. There are various algorithms, there are various tools for each and every aspect that I have mentioned over here, which you will study while you will pursuing your career over the IIMs. Next is the peak demand. There are two types of demands, average and peak. Why is peak demand more important than average demand? Let me tell you. Average demand is you make two calls in a day. Suppose there are 100 people in a locality, each making two calls in a day. So the maximum number of calls through a day is 200. So you need to have a tower which can deal with 200 calls, and you can satisfy the average demand. But what happens if there's an event in that locality? What happens where it's a New Year Eve where you're making calls to each and every relative? So you are making 10 calls, and suppose the people increases number of people increase to 1,000, and each person is making 10 calls, then you are making 10,000 calls in a day, and that tower which was initially there is not able to handle that calls. So it will affect the quality of service, and it will have call drops. Your brand image will suffer. So you need to analyze your peak demand, and you should make the systems such that it should be able to handle a peak demand invariant of whether whatever the average quantity it is dealing with. So there is a cost trade-off, whether you want to satisfy that peak demand with higher costs, incurring higher cost, or whether you want to just go for average demand, keeping your cost low. So that is, you have to make an optimal decision over here. Then we come for tower location. Where to locate the towers? Should see, if you are in a city, the towers will be located within a proximity because the density of population is very high. But if you're going on a highway, you the towers will be situated very far because the density of population per tower is very low. So that determines the tower location and the number of towers required. Then we come for cells. How should we distribute the cells? Whether it should be hexagonal, whether we should use octagonal structure, depending upon the bandwidths which we have and how can we distribute the bandwidths. Then hands off. You are traveling from one place to another. You are on a call, and that call is routed to tower A. Now you're going away from tower A but near to tower B. So how will the hands off take place between tower A and B? Is that hands off efficient or not? That is determined by operations. And finally, outsourcing. As we can see that each telecom operator, Idea, Airtel, Tata Docomo, they can each set up their own towers. But what happens is that setting up a tower has a huge cost associated with it. So whether they should set up their own towers, or whether they should ask a company like Motorola, which have already is tower Ericsson, sorry, not Motorola, Ericsson, which is already its towers situated in many places. Should they pay them a rent to use their towers, or should they set up their own towers? So that is also an important aspect we come to. Now let's move to a manufacturing industry after we have discussed the various concepts of services industry. So these are the various terms that are associated with manufacturing industry. A few could be associated to service industry as well, but I'll be discussing them in aspect of a manufacturing industry. We'll be going through each and every aspect in the subsequent slides. Inventory, the various times, lead time, flow time, the capacity, the bottleneck, the fixed cost and their implications, ERP, Six Sigma. We'll be going through each and every point in the next slides. So I'll be starting with the inventory. Okay, inventory. So inventory, as you can read on the screen, it refers to the goods and materials that a business holds for an ultimate purpose of resale or repair. So why we need inventory? If you want to make a product, just procure the raw material from the suppliers, make the product and supply it. Why do we need inventory? Because if it is costing us so much, why do we actually need it? Because uncertain demand. You do not know what demand could arise in the future. Suppose uh, you are a Diwali crackers manufacturing firm, and you know that Diwali comes in November, and you are starting a production process from January to meet the demand that will arrive in November. So you need to maintain an inventory for that. You'll manufacture some products in January, you'll stock it. Then in February, you'll stock them. And when the November comes, you'll send all the products to market to sell. Value appreciation. Value appreciation is a direct link with inflation. A product which is manufactured now, suppose a soap you manufactured, will sell at 10 rupees for now. But if you'll sell it a year later, it will sell at 12 rupees. So sometimes you maintain an inventory because you have an apprehension that a value could appreciate. Or maybe suppose you need a raw material. You're getting a raw material at rupees 5 now, and if you buy that a year later, you'll get it for rupees 7. So you'll want to procure the material at a cheaper rate 1 year before and stock it in the inventory if the inventory holding costs are not that high, to cut the cost and make maximum profits. Then is time lags. If I'm making a product, I tell my supplier, please send me this product. He'll take a day, 1 day, or 2 day. Till then, I'll have to wait. So I should have an inventory maintained for that 1 or 2 days, so that if I'll order him and he'll deliver me on the third day, so I have sufficient raw material for 2 days, so that my production process does not get hampered. And next is economies of scale. Economies of scale is when you increase the production capacity, your costs come down, so your profits go up. So sometimes you feel it's good to have, suppose if you're getting from a buyer, you say, please send me 10 sheets of iron. He will give it to you at 100 rupees. And if you'll tell him, sell me 100 sheets of iron, he will give you at 90 rupees. So that, in that way, you can acquire bulk material, you can produce in bulk, you can store it, and you can sell it over a period of time to achieve economies of scale. Now, what are the different types of inventory? There are basically three types of inventories. There are others also, but we'll be considering three: raw material, work in progress, and finished goods. Apart from it, there's also one more: in transit inventory. In transit is just maybe the goods and goods that are in the transportation process, from that has left your factory but not yet reached the consumer. So that is in transit inventory. But we'll be discussing these three types of inventory. Raw materials. It's very simple. Raw materials. To make a soap, what do you require? You require chemicals, talc, and silica. What is the work in progress? So you mix the chemicals with talc and silica, and you have got a shampoo. Suppose you get a soap liquid. So that is a work in progress. You cannot deliver that shampoo liquid to the consumer who's expecting a soap. So that is something that is not completed. That is work in progress. Certain raw material has been used. It could be 0% raw material that has been used, or 100%. And labor is also used. It could be 0% or 100%. It can vary. So we cannot generalize it. Then finished goods. Now we had that soap liquid. That soap liquid could be merged with silica, and it could be dried to make a soap, or it could be powdered. It could be dried to make a powder form to make a detergent, or we could add a little thickening to it, and we could make it as a shampoo bottle. So at the end, we get a finished product from the raw materials. So one thing that companies, to achieve to reduce the cost, they want that the work in progress should be as low as possible, because they want that once you have a raw material, instantly convert them to finished goods, because whatever is there in is in work in progress inventory, that is costing you and that is not giving you any benefits. So that is why we classify this inventory into different parts to understand where we are incurring cost on different type of inventories and how to optimize each one of them. Then we come to the point of assembly line. Assembly line was introduced by Ford in 1934, the Model T. Assembly line is not a revolutionary concept. It's just that you have merged all the operations in a single line. Earlier, what was to be done? If there was a worker manufacturing a car, he has a workstation. He will be assembling the tires. He will be fitting the glass. He will be checking the electronics. He will be putting in the engine. One person will be doing all the work, and it was not very efficient. What Ford said, each person should be assigned their own work. Let assembly line be there. One person will be fitting the tires, the next will be fitting the headlights, the next will be putting in the engine, the next will be testing the automobile, the next will be delivering the product. So with that, the knowledge curve. What is the knowledge curve? It is, suppose there's a person who is working on one task day in and day out, he becomes very efficient in that. If I'm fitting the tires day in and day out, for the first time it will take me 10 minutes, then it will take me 9 minutes, and then when I'm very efficient at it will take me 5 minutes. So you can get the efficiency out of each and every worker through this assembly line process. But if a person was doing all the tasks by himself, he would not be getting that efficiency. So that is how assembly line works. So as you can see a practical example, his innovation reduced the time it took to build a car from 12 hours to just 2.5 hours. That is the level of efficiency you get from an assembly line. We'll be furthering discussing the various times, the bottleneck, what are associated with assembly line in the next slide. Let's go to that. Okay. So these are the various times: lead time, cycle time, and flow time. These are the various control measures that are there in the assembly line, or maybe not in the assembly line, maybe in any process. What is a lead time? There is an example below. I'll be explaining all these times with an example. What is the lead time? It is a time between ordering and delivering. I'm a customer. I go to a bookstore and I'll say that I want this book. Okay. He will deliver me the book after 10 days. So that 10 days is the lead time. What happened in the 10 days is my order went to the publishing house. They made a copy for me. They typed the copy, they binded the copy, they delivered it. It came back to the reseller, and the reseller gave it to me. So this is what all happened in the 10 days process. And the total time taken is lead time. Next is flow time. I'll be discussing cycle time later. Next is flow time. Flow time is the time that is actually taken in the production process. Since I ordered a book, see that I ordered a book, the demand went to the producer, the publishing house, they typed. So the time that took in typing, the time that took in binding and making the final product ready is the flow time. After that, some time took in delivery, sometime maybe in any other process on the part of reseller, on the part of retailer. So that is not included in flow time, but that is included in lead time. So flow time is specific to time that has been spent on manufacturing, whereas lead time is manufacturing plus other time, ordering and delivering. Next is cycle time. It is the average time between successive deliveries. You are a car manufacturer. You can make from a production facility, a car comes out each hour. So that 1 hour is your cycle time. That at 12 o'clock, you have manufactured a Maruti Swift. Then at 1 o'clock, one more Maruti Swift. 2 o'clock, one more Maruti Swift. So what is the cycle time? 1 hour. And how will you determine that cycle time? That is determined by the bottleneck. Suppose to make a Maruti Swift, we take two operations. First is making a chassis. Second is making an engine. So making a chassis requires half an hour per car, and making an engine requires 1 hour. So chases will become very fast, but they'll have to wait because making or assembling an engine is taking a longer time. So the slowest process in whole of the assembly line determines your bottleneck, and that bottleneck determines your cycle time. That with what speed your that cars will coming out. And sorry, I forgot to mention one point. If you have any queries, those will be answered at the end of this session. You can write down on the right side. You can see a chat window. You can write all your queries on that window, and they will be addressed at the end of this session. So coming back to our topic, I'll explain with you example. This is suppose I place an order. Operation 1 requires a time of 2 units. Operation 2 a time of 3 units. Operation 3 a time of 1 unit. Transportation a time of 2 units. So what will be the lead time? A total of all the 3 operations plus transportation. That will be 2, 3, 1 and 2. So that 8 units is the total lead time. What is the flow time? Flow time is the time taken in operations. 2 plus 3 plus 1, all the 3 operations. So 6 will be the flow time. What will be the cycle time? Cycle time will be the bottleneck time, the slowest operation in whole of the process. The slowest process is operation number 2, which is taking time 3. So time unit 3 will be cycle time. So you will be getting each product after 3 units. Now what is capacity? Capacity is the total number of units that you can produce in a given period. Suppose a given period is a day, and suppose in a day you're working 10 hours and your cycle time is 1 hour. That means you can manufacture a car in 1 hour. So in 10 hours, how many cars can you manufacture? You can manufacture 10 cars. So that is a capacity. So these are the various concepts that are related to assembly line and operations. So we'll be moving forward. Next is Six Sigma. Six Sigma is a very hot topic right now, and it would be asked from you in the interviews. So what is Six Sigma? Six Sigma aims at just one thing: to improve all the processes. There are various formal definitions of Six Sigma, but the major objective is that you have to improve all the processes. I'll be explaining it with you an example of Mumbai Dabbawalas. Trust me, the Mumbai Dabbawalas, which deliver food to each and everyone in their offices, they are not officially Six Sigma certified, but they have a Six Sigma efficiency. See, what they do is they take a tiffin from your home, then they board a train, then all the tiffins are assembled at some place, then some other person picks up a tiffin and he delivers to your offices. So there are various processes that are taking place. For the sake of simplicity, let's assume that there are 5 processes: picking up the tiffin, then train ride, assembling, then after all the tiffins have been assembled, then sorting the tiffin which to go where, and then final delivery. So there are 5 processes. So we need to optimize each and every process with Six Sigma efficiency. Please note that Six Sigma is for operations, not the final product. Suppose you take an example of a manufacturing firm, a laptop making firm, or maybe take an example of Apple. So what does Apple do? It make a chip. So making a chip with Six Sigma efficiency, then putting the chip on the motherboard with Six Sigma efficiency, then putting in other hardware with Six Sigma efficiency, final assembly of the product with Six Sigma efficiency, distribution of the product with Six Sigma efficiency. So each operation should be Six Sigma efficient. And what is the tolerance level of Six Sigma is 3.4 defects per million opportunities. So it will say that if you're making a million, not a million products, if you've done a million operations, out of that only 3.4 operations will be defective. Rest all would be effective. And implementing Six Sigma is very difficult. It's very cost intensive. You need to put in a huge cost to get Six Sigma efficiency. So why do we want Six Sigma efficiency? Your Toyota, okay, you have an airbag in your car. Suppose that airbag fails. That airbag was not manufactured with Six Sigma. So there could be various lawsuits that could be against you. You could lose your brand image. So you have to analyze that a single failure could be very, you need to analyze that what is the cost of a single failure if that happens in a product. So that will determine that what is the necessity of Six Sigma. If you are in a healthcare company, Six Sigma becomes very important. But if it's just like a normal, suppose a normal soap industry, doesn't matter if level of glycerin is a little less, so it won't matter that much. So you need to analyze with what business that you are in, so that you can implement whether you should implement Six Sigma or not. So there are various processes through which Six Sigma can be implemented: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. This is the flow. Define is, suppose there is a Mumbai dabba wala. You define that is there any problem that why we are implementing Six Sigma. Yes, there is a problem that the dabbas are being delivered. Dabba, I mean tiffins. Okay, that the dabbas are being delivered late. So that is a problem. Measure. You measure each and every process, that it takes 10 minutes to pick up a tiffin, then it's take 20 minutes for a train ride, then it's take 10 minutes in the distribution center, and then it's take the final 10 minutes for the delivery. So you've measured all the processes. Then you analyze each and every process, that where is the problem lying, that the train ride is taking 20 minutes. Suppose you can take a express train in place of a passenger train, then it could save you 5 minutes. So you analyze the various opportunities, the various alternatives that are there, and then you choose the best alternative among them. Then you improve that process, that rather than going by train, suppose if I go by a personal car, it will take only just 10 minutes. However, that is not possible in Mumbai, but just let's consider it. So that is how you improve each and every process, so that the final delivery will be on time. And then you control. You see that whatever you have provided the solution with, whether it is whether the control mechanism are in place, so that suppose it deviates from it, the process deviates from its point, so you can control them, you can measure them, that yes, there is a problem arising, so you can control them. So you need to put control mechanism in place. So now we'll come to SCM, supply chain management. Earlier what was done was procuring raw material and delivery of final goods were considered different operations, and it is justified, because when to order, what to order is determined by the production manager, and when to deliver, what to deliver is determined by marketing department. So the departments are different, their operations are different, so put them different. But suppose you're delivering a product from Delhi to Kolkata, the finished product. Your truck is going from Delhi to Kolkata, it is incurring a cost, you deliver the product, and the truck is coming back empty. And the next day you send another truck to pick up raw material from Kolkata to Delhi. So you're incurring 2 times the cost. So if you merge those two departments together, the raw material, the finished goods, you can save on the cost. So that's where supply chain management comes into place. This was a very simple example, but supply chain management takes into aspects all the parts: product development, sourcing, production, logistics, synchronizing supply and demand. I gave you an example of synchronizing supply and demand, and IT. So supply chain and management has become very important for the organizations, because it helps you cut cost, it helps you increase efficiency, and it helps you optimize your processes. So that's why supply chain management could be a very hot topic for your interview. So please make a note of it: the Six Sigma, the supply chain management, and the next topic will be coming to. The next topic is lean operations, just in time. So in a short, I'll say it means zero inventory. Zero inventory is, suppose you go to a Dell website, you place an order for a laptop, i3 processor, 4 GB RAMs, backlit keyboard, ATEC optimal drive, optical drive. Another person goes to Dell website, he puts an order of his own laptop. So now each person has his own demand, each person has his own requirement. So suppose if you are maintaining an inventory, you do not know what inventory you should maintain of, because a person may require 4 GB RAM, another will say I'll just require 2 GB RAM. So you'll need to maintain a very large inventory of each and every product combination possible, and that is not possible. So there you use just in time. So Dell received a demand that okay, one laptop is required, i3 with 4 GB. It will immediately send the order to its suppliers that send me one 4 GB RAM, send me one i3 processor, send me an optical drive. They'll send it to them. The product is manufactured and it will be shipped to the seller. What does this provide you with? Flexibility. Another example is Toyota. What Toyota is doing it, all its suppliers are situated in close proximity to Toyota. So a supplier which is giving it a alloy wheel, the next supplier is giving it a tire, the next supplier is giving it an airbag, all are situated in the same plant itself. So whenever Toyota requires any of the product, it will just simply send them that please send me a product in this. So what Toyota saves on is inventory cost. Toyota does not need to maintain any inventory, and Toyota is saving on all the costs that are required in the inventory. So after that, we'll be coming to product life cycle. So I'll just explain it very brief. Whenever a product is introduced in the market, it goes through 4 stages: the market introduction stage, then the growth, maturity, and then the decline stage. Suppose take an example of smartphones. Okay, so in the year 2000, no one knows what a smartphone is. Then various smartphone came out. Apple iPhone came out, Samsung smartphones came out, Nokia was a pioneer in the smartphones. So they introduced smartphones in the market. People started using them, people started liking them. So that was the market introduction stage. Then various competitors stepped in. HTC came in, Sony came in, Apple came in with the iPhone 5. So now they're all in growth stage because smartphone industry now is booming. But what happened to the conventional phone industry? The phones which does not have smartphone capabilities, they were now in declining stage because they were be introduced in the early 1990s. Okay, in the 2000s they were in the growth stage, and when the smartphone came, they went into the maturity stage, and now they're in the declining stage. But the smartphones are in a growth stage. So a product life cycle is very important for you to know that your product is in what stage of its life cycle, so that you can plan your production processes or your marketing campaign accordingly. We are just on the last slides. So last is determining profitable customers. It is a practical application of operations. There's an 80-20 rule which says that 80% of company profits come from its top 20 customers. If you have 100 customers now, then only 20% of the customers are giving you 80% of the profits. Rest 80% of the customers are just uh, costing you on a cost to cost basis. How do we determine that? Suppose you are a car salesman. It costs you 5 lakh to manufacture a car and ship it to a dealer. Now there is a one customer which is willing to buy it 6 lakhs, and there is another customer which will bargain very hard for it, and it will say that I'll buy it only for 5 lakh and 5,000. Which is more profitable? The customer which is giving you 6 lakh rupees. But that is a very easy to determine. But there are other customers also which say, okay, I'll be paying you 6 lakh, but I'll require this service, I'll require this service, I'll require this service. So ultimately the cost goes up, and you need to analyze all the cost to find that whether you're earning profitability or not. So there are various methods. You can see the methods: activity-based cost system. These will be covered in the financial aspects, consumer management system, retention, advocacy, to determine whether which customers are giving you profitability, so that you can specifically focus on those customers only. So this is our last slide: ERP, enterprise resource planning, and it is not specific to operations. It includes all the trades: marketing, finance, IT, and operation. And you can expect a question on ERP in your interviews. So what does ERP do? It links all the processes together: finance, HR, engineering, project management, data services, CRM, purchasing, each and every aspect together. Because at the end of the day, you want to make profit, you want to achieve economies of scale, you want to save cost in each and every way possible. So by synchronizing two departments together, you can save on the cost. Then yes, ERP is efficient, yes, ERP is required. So as companies are growing bigger and bigger, and they're going global and global, so ERP is becoming more and more important. So with this topic, I'll be wrapping up my slide. So very thank you for attending this webinar. We'll be taking just a 2 minutes break, and after that we'll be answering all your queries. So I'll be just taking a water break. So just 2 minutes break. Thank you guys.
Hello guys, so this is Love and I will be handling all your queries from now. Uh, to few of the queries that you have asked, one of them was what is the difference, means what is exactly the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 distribution. So let me tell you, it's just like logistics is a kind of a distribution system in which suppose a manufacturer directly selling the all his product to the reseller or the retail retailers, then it's called tier 1. And if a particular distribution system comes into the play between manufacturer and the retailer, then it is tier 2 distribution. So basically what happens that when manufacturer direct sells its product to the retailers, then it has to give all the sales support, technical support, education, training, financial services, and all. So and for these, manufacturer has to come up with all their sources for these kind of supports. But when these kind of things are handled by this distributor in between, in terms of a tier 2 distribution system, then it will much more become helpful for the manufacturer itself. Then they are much more focused in the development of the new products. So it's a strategy of a manufacturer whether they will be going with tier 1 distribution system or tier 2 distribution system. It's up to them and up to their capabilities. Okay, and for the next one, I'll be telling you about the supply chain management that you have asked. So in case of supply chain management, you just heard in our uh, webinar, it's all about project mm, product development, sourcing, production, logistics, synchronizing supply and demand, and IT. So actually, what happens then when we are in supply chain, then we need to know what our customer is demanding. So in that case, we need to know what exactly the should be the attributes of a product. So in that case, we need this feedback from the customer. Then in that case, supply chain become important in developing the product so that we can get the feedback from the customers or from the reseller retailers or distribution system. Other than that, sourcing is from where we need to have our supplier, which supplier would you like to choose. That's a part of sourcing, or you can say the procurement part of it. And similarly, the logistics means how will be distributing our product, whether it will be tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 distribution, what things they would be following. And other than that, supply, synchronizing supply and demand. It's like whether you will be able to cater to the demand of the public. Means uh, if there should not be a lag in demand and supply, and for better flow of these supply and demand, we need to have a proper supply chain management. And there was a specific query from the oil and gas sector, and I should say that uh, in case of uh, sourcing and logistics, that you have told us about the EPC, no? Means engineering, procurement, and construction. In that case, sourcing and logistic is the two part where it would be much more helpful to you to have the knowledge of supply chain management. And other than that, synchronizing supply and demand is or the inventory uh, management is also a part of a supply chain, which is much more helpful in case of EPC. And okay, so that's it for the queries that you have asked. Uh, I hope this session would be fruitful to you. All the best. Thank you.